laugh.
All you need to do is say,
we're live.
Oh, are we? Again, it happens again. Welcome to the show with no name. I'm Adaire Palmer and
I'm DreaTheonie Roussianos. I'm pointing the right way.
And I'll just point anyway because I always get it wrong, but that's half the fun of it. This show was dreamed up by myself and DreaTheonie to help people in your local community to raise their profile and encourage awareness of support of what matters to them and their communities. We also help not-for-profits, charities and service clubs to connect with communities to raise brand awareness and help the staff and volunteers working with them to become the best brand champions they can be for their cause. DreaTheonie, who have we got today?
Today we have somebody who I met online a very long time ago. When I say a very long time ago, I'm not talking 300 years ago or 30 years ago, but probably about 2 years ago, I think it was. And I need to close Outlook because those beeps are going to keep coming through. Sorry about that. Go away. Okay, the joys of live. So Steve has his day job. He's self-employed, and all this stuff that goes over my head. He's all over computers and programming and software development and all that stuff, which goes completely over my head. He's 65 years old. Now, I want you to keep that in mind when you hear what he has done in the last 5 years, what he has achieved. So he's a veteran of all things running. He's run marathons, half marathons. He did a 24-hour run as well, which that goes over my head, just like all the software stuff. But when Steve and I first connected, I'm just having issues with my scrolling here. Sorry about this. I can't multitask. I'm a man. I cannot multitask. In 2013, at the age of 60, Steve was armed with a folding bike and a bus pass, started cycling backwards and forwards to his work on his folding bike to raise money and awareness for children's disease and for funds for Neuroblastoma UK. Now, 5 years later, he was on his sixth bike. Now, have you got your first?
Did he wear out 6 bikes?
He must have worn out 6 bikes. Now, do you have one bike?
Right. I had one for a little while, but I broke it and I didn't get another one. Actually, what about you? Have you had a bike?
I have, not for a very long time. Last time I went for a ride, I had to borrow a bike. So he's on his 6th bike and has cycled the equivalent of twice around the equator. He came to Australia to ride from Brisbane to Adelaide for Neuroblastoma Australia. And you'll love this as a numbers woman and numerology and all that stuff. I got excited when Steve told me how far he did actually ride. He did 2,222 kilometres, which he knocked off in 15 days at the ripe young age of 65.
Oh my God.
Get your head around that. So not content with that, he went back to the UK, sat down to write a book about the 5-year journey, and it's now in the Amazon bookstore. So comment right below to receive details directly to your inbox with how to purchase Steve's book. This man is such an inspiration. I had the pleasure of meeting him personally when he was in Adelaide Adelaide first, I should say, and which was only a couple of months ago. Now he's got he's a absolute inspiration. I just can't get my head around everything that he's been doing for no gain of his own. So he's a data man, a running man, a cycling man. He's a writing man. He's Forrest Gump on wheels and on the keyboard, and he shows no sign of slowing down anytime soon. And I absolutely love that intro. Welcome to the show, Steve.
Hi. Good to be here.
Steve,
Good to be
I haven't got him yet. Well, he's probably there. Here he is. Can we just ask that before we talk to Steve, can you invite your friends to watch? Because I think this is an amazing story that your friends will want to hear. If you're looking for some inspiration on this Thursday morning or Wednesday evening in the UK, please invite your friends and share this show because I've got a feeling it's going to be a doozy. And if you're looking inspiration, we've got it for you right
on
here.
the Facebook page for about 3 or 4 hours. So people in the UK, if they haven't already turned in, you know, that they hopefully will. Some of them will be watching it, and some of my Aussie mates will have tuned in as well. I reckon.
They can catch the replay. I thought Adaire says you're a Greek wife. I am Adaire's Greek wife and a pain in her ass.
That's Greek, not geek. Steve, it's so amazing to meet you.
Thanks for tuning in, Ros. Ros says, wow. Now, I'm assuming she has put that in after everything, and especially after your 2,222 kilometre ride, because I just, the numbers. Before we go on, I want to tell everyone about that number and the other things that we found. So you and I, Steve, when you were in Adelaide, we met. You came to my house, and then there was a whole other stuff. So I live at the number 22.
Yeah, you do. And my brother stays at 22 as well. My brother stays at number 22.
There you go. Yeah. So he was meant to be, but we're meant to meet. Yeah, so she's, Ros says she's flabbergasted by that number. We can't even count that high.
Not enough fingers and toes.
And the time it was written in. So, so 15 days, that's not 22, it's better.
That is massive.
It was 148k a day average. That was the average. That was good, you know.
Now, I remember last time I rode a bike, Steve, was 2 or 3 years ago. It was over Christmas, and it was a fun ride. We rode, I think it was 20 Ks up the road, and then for the 20 Ks back, we stopped at every pub on the way back for a drink. As you do. It was summer. And I'm thinking, I know how much my behind felt from the bike seat just from that ride. And I'm thinking that, those padded bike shorts don't really cut it.
Yeah.
You use special cream as well. That helps.
Okay.
The last thing you need, if you get saddle sores, then you're doomed. You know.
Yeah.
That's worse than pulling muscles because it's there with it all day. So you don't want that.
Yeah, you can't get away. Yeah. Steve, I'm curious as to what started it. How did this all begin? You've done some amazing things, and
it started because on my Twitter feed there was a guy trying to raise money for 3 kids in the UK: Oscar Knox in Belfast, Vanessa Riddle at a wee place called Troon, which is not far from where I stay, and Mackenzie Furnace in Alloa, which is it's north of Glasgow. So he was trying to fundraise for these 3 kids simultaneously. And I didn't really know much about neuroblastoma back then. In fact, I knew nothing really when I started. But what did hit me was that these families were tasked with raising typically £300,000 in our money, so that's $500,000 Australian.
That's a lot.
Usually less than 3 months. And if you didn't raise the money, you didn't get the treatment, and then potentially your child would die.
Yeah.
Because if you get diagnosed with stage 4 neuroblastoma, and by the way, age 2 is the most common age of diagnosis, and that's why the bike ride from Brisbane to Adelaide, Ride to Cure, has a number 2 in the middle, and why it was 2,222 kilometres. That's why we picked that distance. But these kids, you see, they have a real difficult battle, and the treatments typically were overseas, and so I thought, well, this isn't right, because not only were the families faced with having their family life decimated by the disease, they were simultaneously having to raise $500,000 Australian dollars equivalent in pounds sterling. So I just chucked it out there on social media. I'd got this folding bike, And I just chucked it out there to a few people and said, do you think it would fly if I said, chuck me a penny a mile? If I cycle 10 miles, will you give me 10 pence? And the answer came back, well, there's only one way you're going to find out, and that's to do it. And so I started, and I never stopped.
No, like Forrest Gump. You went until you couldn't run any further, then you turned around and went back home.
Well,
So
behind me is the flag. There are two flags. There's another one on the back of that. It says on the flag, 1 man, 4 years, 25,000 miles.
Wow.
So I knocked off the 25,000 miles in under 3 years. So I still had a bit of time in hand. And kids were still getting diagnosed in the UK at the rate of 3 a week.
Wow.
So it didn't seem a very good idea just to give up. So I carried on. And that's what led me to Australia eventually.
And sorry, Adaire, you were about to say something.
I wanted to know what the time frame was, but Steve has just said it was been in 4 years that you've done 25,000 miles. Is that correct?
I did 25,000 miles in under 3 years. Under three. So
that's
if I turn it into Aussie distances, I'm now at 74,000 kilometres in 5 yees.
Roz says you forgot to find out how the brakes work, so you just kept going. Hi, Simone. Thanks for joining us. That's actually quite funny.
That's 74,000 kilometres.
Oh, did you just do the math?
No, I just listened to Steve.
74,000 Ks. That's crazy.
15,000 a year.
Now, there are people you've met along the way, who have inspired you to go ahead. And there's the little girl, the song that Amalia wrote about.
Correct.
So do you want to tell us a little about that and how, because you've connected with a whole heap of people because of a common interest, really?
Yeah, well, let me wind that whole story back to about March 2014, because someone, an unknown person, and I will never find out unless Twitter release all my data back to me, but somebody retweeted the story of a kid from Adelaide who was walking around the coast of Australia for Brainchild. So that's a brain cancer charity hosted in Brisbane. And so this person was 3/4 of the way round the coast of Oz by the time I got the story. And that story had been really quite quiet until Jimmy got down the East Coast, Newcastle, Sydney and around there. And then that story
This is Jimmy Harrington.
Jimmy Harrington. So Jimmy's story took off when he was coming down the East Coast, and he ended up raising nearly $250,000 Australian dollars. And he did the whole thing. He walked. You think I went a long way? He walked 18,000 Ks in 13 months.
Wow.
So Adaire and I are talking about doing what's it called? The walk we were talking about doing, Adaire. Not to break the hill, the other one, the Camino Trail.
The Camino, the pilgrimage in Spain. My sister has just come back, and I'm thinking of. This is for motor neuron disease. She wanted to walk the Broken Hill, but I'm thinking the Camino pilgrimage is definitely. I think there's less roadkill.
Spain
would be better than outback New South Wales, in that sense.
Yeah.
Anyway,
going back to Jimmy, I started following Jimmy's story, and some of my followers similarly started following his work, and some of Jimmy's people started following me, and one of those was Tara Lockett, who I also met when I was over. Tara did the Facebook Live feed from Seymour College when I finished there in the middle of September. That was only 5 weeks ago. You know, 6 weeks ago,
wow.
I was in Adelaide. But anyway, so Tara worked with Julian, and Julian was on community radio down at BBI FM. So that was the big connection, because Julian had his internet radio show on a Sunday night, and he was plugging my bike ride, you see. And he used to get guest DJs in to just come and play some of their own stuff. And one of these DJs was Missy Faye, who'd been, she was a nightclub DJ, I think late 80s, early 90s. And her music was just fantastic. It was my style, my genre from that era, you see. So Missy and I became friends on Facebook. And then she posted a song on her Facebook wall by a band called Frank Loves Joan. And I thought this video was really, really quite good. And the song was fantastic. It was the song Little Feet. So I looked that up, and then I did a bit of research on who was Frank Loves Joan, because it just appeared to be this young lady, you see. It didn't appear to be a band. It was just this young lady, and I thought she was Irish because her voice is utterly unique. And so I discovered that Frank Loves Joan is actually Amelie Batrill. So Amelie and I became friends on Facebook, and this was about 10 weeks before wee Ailey, who was at this time free of neuroblastoma. She was about 6 or 7 weeks shy of her second anniversary of diagnosis. So knowing that Amelie was a gifted singer-songwriter, I asked her, because I'm cheeky, you see, I work on the basis that people can only say no, and occasionally they say yes. So I asked Amelie whether she would write a special song for Ailey's anniversary, and she said yes. So there was a bit of toing and froing and ideas flowing backwards and forwards between Scotland and Australia. And then 2 days before the anniversary, the prototype first cut of the song, you know, came over the airwaves, and I just thought it was fantastic. Amelie wanted something to be available for the day. And then she said, well, when do you really need the proper version by? And I said, well, actually, in about 36 hours. So Amelie and Ben, her producer, they went into the studio on the next day. And the actual live recording, the proper professional version, was put out.
So that
went on Facebook.
They were able to do that in a matter of hours, by the sound of it.
Yeah. So that went on Facebook on Ailey's page, and it remained the biggest viewed video, you know, of the whole journey. 35,000 hits, I think it's had.
Wow. And where can we find that? Did you say it was on?
Well, it's possibly more difficult to track down now, because sadly, Ailey passed away about 15 months ago. So her page now is a legacy page.
Oh, okay.
But the video is still there, but it's just not as easy to find as it used to be.
Yeah.
We'll have to make it a mission to hunt that one down.
Yeah.
It's probably in my message history with you somewhere, Steve.
Yeah. Well, there was actually a follow-on from that, because about 18 months ago, Ailey's best friend, Harrison, Ailey was 5 and Harrison was 6. And Harrison told his parents that when they were both older, he wanted to marry Ailey. And that his parents explained to him that was probably not going to be possible. So the two sets of parents got together and decided they would do a best friends forever ceremony instead. And the only place that was big enough to hold this event in the northeast of Scotland was the Exhibition and Conference Centre. So they actually got one of the larger halls set out as a wedding venue for guests, but the children effectively they were ushered into a small side room for privacy. And going back to Amelie, she wrote another special song for that event. Amelie and I were beaming live on Facebook Messenger while the event was going on, and that song had its first public airing at the Best Friends Forever ceremony, and there wasn't a dry eye in the house. So
I couldn't imagine.
Amelie has had a lasting effect on the whole life cycle for neuroblastoma journey. I guess these things are meant to be.
Yeah.
So rewind 2 years ago, could you have imagined that you'd have the experiences you've had in the last 24 months?
No, not at all. Now, Julian, you see, Julian and I, we were Facebook messaging backwards and forwards while he was on air on his show. And he kept telling his listeners, we're going to have to get this guy to Australia. And I'm kind of thinking, well, I've got a job, fully employed, and because I was still working for somebody else at that time. And it was a nice to do, but I didn't really see it happening at that time. But of course, when you're your own boss, you can decide what the rules are. So behind the scenes, Julian did some research and he found Neuroblastoma Australia. That's all down to him. And so Julian and Lucy, who is the president of Neuroblastoma Australia, she lost her daughter to the disease 8 years ago. They did a bit of to-ing and fro-ing and putting some ideas together. And then Lucy emailed me late June, early July of 2017 and asked me if I was interested in doing a ride for them in Australia. And I guess it took me about a couple of milliseconds to think, actually, I do want to do this. I absolutely want to do it. And then,
I think he answered before she finished her question.
Yeah, basically, yeah. So I'd never been to Australia before, and apart from Julian, who I met at football about 18 months ago when he was over here,
Now,
I didn't know
Adaire,
anyone in Australia. I didn't know anyone. So
is a sport with a round ball. So he's talking soccer. It's a round ball and you kick it into a net. Adaire doesn't know a football from a squash racket.
And I don't care. However, it has its...
She cares about the story, though.
Well, I had a mate. Even though I didn't know anyone in Australia, I had a mate who lived in Brisbane, a big ginger Aussie boy. And he and I both met.
Like a cat, tomcat.
Yeah. Well, his name's not Tom, so he wouldn't be a Tom. But Paul and I both married girls from Inverness, and so our connection is that we're both supporters of the biggest football team in Scotland, Inverness Caledonian Thistle. It's the biggest because it's the longest name. See,
it has a use. That's what my point was.
Yeah. So Paul and I knew each other from the football and drinking beer. You see, so because we'd met up a couple of times. And so I bounced this idea off Paul and said, look, Neuroblastoma Australia have asked me to do this ride and I've said yes. So now I need to start planning. And I've got all these supporters down in Adelaide, so that has to be part of the journey. And you're the only guy I know that stays in Oz, so we could start from your house.
And it's just worked out like that.
And that's basically that is how Brisbane to Adelaide kicked off. But then Lucy did some homework. she got a better venue in Brisbane because we started actually at the kids' hospital, the Lady Salento Children's Hospital. That's really where we started, and then we had 2 phones on separate networks. You'll like this bit. We had 2 phones on separate networks, and we called it Google Stalker because there's an option in Google where you can set your phone so you can track other people and they can track you. Have you ever seen that? It's great.
Is that kind of like Find My iPhone?
It's sort of, but it's running all the time. It's running all the time. So if you go into Google Maps, you can physically see where the other phone is. So, you know, if you want to know where Jerry is when he says he's out playing football or golf, you know, you set it on his phone when he's not looking.
This is like checking out the kids on Snapchat.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You're in my head.
So what Paul and I did, you see, what we did, we set these 2 phones to track each other.
Yeah.
And so where there were stages of this ride where I was completely away from him because my path or my road was taking me where he couldn't drive, we could always track each other. So he knew that if I was stopped for more than 5 minutes, either I'd been eaten by a magpie or
you might have been succumbed to a drop bear even, you know.
Well, yeah. Now there's a newspaper at Crayford, which is like at the top of the big hill. There's a roundabout. There's a pub. There's a pub up there by the roundabout, and we met a newspaper reporter there, and he wrote this great story, and it was the last newspaper report that was sent to me about 10 days ago, and the headline was just, it broke the internet. It was one of these great headlines, and it was along the lines of Scott's biker boosted by Scott's biker boosted by birds and beer. It was something like that, you know, or beer and birds.
So it sounds like you went to the pub, you met up with a heap of women, got completely blind drunk, and then you jumped on that bike and kept on going.
Yeah. But the subplot, you see, was that the birds were swooping magpies because they were a problem.
Yeah, that's always an issue.
But the beer's there.
Now, I want to let everyone know that Steve is in the UK at the moment. It's almost 11 o'clock there, so it's okay that he's not 9:30 for him.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if
and I wouldn't frown upon it anyway.
I did want to make a point that when you were saying sharing your story, Stephen, thank you so much. It's been fascinating. But what's come through to me is you can't do it alone. And we have a favourite little hashtag. One of our favourites is hashtag It Takes a Village. And it is something that really, from what you're saying, this stuff, it evolves. And as other people come in and they hear about you, it does. That's
exactly the way it runs. Yeah.
So just getting started.
When I started out, I was just one guy with a bus pass and a folding bike and an idea, and it just grew arms and legs, and none of that would have happened without the whole web of social media, and also people back home. People watching this now, they should go on Amazon, into the Amazon store, and if it's in the Amazon AU, the Aussie version, you just search for the word ride and then the number 2 ride.
We can do one better than that. We've done one better than that because Adaire's all over chatbots and keywords and all sorts of stuff.
Not all over it, as in I'm sick of it. She's really good at it.
Comment below. Now, make sure you're in the original broadcast because we have cross-posted to a couple pages. So make sure you're in the original broadcast. The link is above in the blurb. On My Time TV. Comment below with the word ride. It's not case sensitive, so RIDE ride, and you will receive
it's on the shirt.
It's on
Right,
the
that's
shirt.
it.
We will send you a link to the Amazon page so you don't even have to search. This is serving it up on a plate for you, folks. So
This is perfect.
So comment Ride, you'll receive a link to your inbox. You'll get a message to your inbox. You'll have to comment Ride again because Facebook wants to know you're a real person and you actually want a copy of the ebook. So comment Ride again once you receive that message, and you'll receive a link to go straight to the Amazon store to get your copy of Steve's amazingly inspirational story.
Beautiful.
And all the money goes to neuroblastoma research in Sydney at the Children's Cancer Institute.
I think it's amazing that now we've got a few people who have been jumping on and commenting Right already. Thank you everyone for your support. It does take a village.
Vanetta, Roz, yeah, it does. Absolutely it does. So we are right out of time. Steve,
we are right out of time.
Can we get you back on another time? Because I'm sure we didn't even talk about the skeletons behind you. Like, seriously.
No, I mean, and DreaTheonie will want to know about all the stuff I've been doing in predicting footy scores.
I will.
I have a new version.
Adaire will fall asleep
next season.
Oh, really? I'm interested in hearing more about that.
Yeah.
Now
it's called Footy Bus Stop.
Footy Bus Stop or Buster.
Footy
It's
Bus
the
Stop.
accent. It's the accent. Yeah. You went all Ozzy Osbourne on me there for a second. All right, don't go anywhere, Steve. I'm just going to drop you down into the lobby. Don't go anywhere. We'll chat with you again in a moment. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you giving us your time. Wow.
Inspiration plus. So if you're looking for, if you think that there's nothing you can do, if there's a cause that is really that you're passionate about, there is absolutely everything or anything that you can do. And if you feel like you're one person just doing it alone, just know that other people will join the journey. It's taking that first step, putting that foot on the pedal, or planting that first ball like DreaTheonie did by herself, and then other people have come in to help. So it's totally inspirational.
Yeah. And it does take a village, and it's the power of using social media the right way. Steve and I would not have connected but for Facebook.
Yeah.
And, a couple of other people along the way. There are other people who introduced us to each other, but without Facebook, I wouldn't have heard his story at all. Mm-hmm. So, and he may not have ended up in Australia. There's all sorts of things that may not have happened. So we have run out of time. We have run over time. Thank you so much for joining us. Please share this broadcast with your friends. Get them to watch. Comment right below for a link to your inbox which will send you to the Amazon store to get a copy of Steve's ebook, and all proceeds go to Neuroblastoma Australia. So a man in the UK doing stuff for Neuroblastoma Australia, and that's just absolutely amazing.
Hashtag it takes a global village.
It takes a global village, absolutely. Okay, so that's all from us for now. I want to follow Steve Taylor, but I couldn't. We will talk about that. We'll work out how you can connect with him. There's also join his group. In the blurb above, I've got a link to his Facebook group, so you can join that, and then you'll be able to follow everything that Steve's doing with the neuroblastoma journey and all the wonderful things he's doing for Ride to Cure. So on that note, we must be off.
For the
same time, same place. Well, maybe same time. We're usually 9:30.
Well, we did half an hour early because we had other commitments. So looking at 9:30 Australian Central Daylight Time on mytimetv.live for the show with no name. We'll see you next week.
Bye for now.
Bye.